for December 1st, 2000, Biography with Harry Smith.
Tammy Faye Bakker Messner. Once the darling of Christian broadcasting, she's picked herself up from her fall from grace. The very word televangelism conjures images of unbridled greed, hypocrisy, and self-indulgence. Tammy Faye and her first husband, Jim Bakker, had much to do with that. Together, they built a religious empire, and eventually, she lost both her fortune and her family, all in the blink of an eyelash. Tammy Faye is the proverbial David, facing down the Goliath of her past.
Most people think she's crazy and wild.
As a child, she knew exactly what she wanted, and she went after it.
It was Jim and Tammy, the all-American Christian couple.
Tammy always tried to make everything light because she believed God has a sense of humor.
She's one of the strongest women alive.
Tammy's just going to be Tammy. And if you don't like it, you know, that's your problem.
Traveling preachers were a familiar sight in small towns across America during the 1940s and 50s. Preaching at tent revivals, they painted a world of sin and salvation and urged personal contact with Jesus. That world shaped the life of Tammy Faye LaValle. She was born on March 7th, 1942, the first child of Rachel Fairchild LaValle. Rachel belonged to the Assemblies of God, an evangelical Pentecostal sect known for its effusive displays of faith. Rachel had planned to become a missionary, but then she married Carl LaValle in 1941. There was another child before Carl's infidelity destroyed the short union. Her divorce tainted Rachel in the eyes of church elders and excluded her from an active role in the church.
I remember a lot of times she'd be crying, why can't I just do my part? Why can't I just play the piano? Why can't I just hold an office in the women's mission circle? And she'd just cry.
A lot of don't do this and don't do that, you know, for a Christian. So it's kind of narrow, if you know what I mean. You know what, it's Pentecost is what it was.
It's certainly a culture of intolerance. Everything is either black or white, right or wrong, and there's little left in the gray areas.
So it was a strict atmosphere that Tammy grew up in. She lived with her mother and brother in International Falls, Minnesota, a very small town on the river that separates the United States from Canada. When Tammy was 6, her mother Rachel married Fred Grover, who worked at the local paper mill. His salary would be stretched to the limit as the family grew by 6 more children, 3 boys and 3 girls. Fred was an uncompromising father and a strict disciplinarian.
If you needed it, you got it. You know, the old razor strap or maybe a little green willow across the butt, let you know what he thought. If you didn't like it, that was your problem.
There were a lot of kids running around. Sometimes they'd have shoes on, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they'd have pantsuits on, sometimes they wouldn't. And sometimes their hair wasn't combed. But Tammy was always clean and her hair was always done.
The family lived in a small house with no indoor plumbing. The 4 boys slept in one bed and the 4 girls in another. Space was always in short supply, but in spring, there was an abundance of lilacs.
When I was a little girl, my mother would always keep our house full of lilacs in the summertime. We had about, probably 50 big lilac bushes out by our house, and every time I'd walk in the house, Mom would have a big, huge bouquet of lilacs. The fragrance of the lilacs was the most beautiful smell I've ever smelled in my whole life.
Tammy helped her overburdened mother with household chores and often babysat her younger siblings, but she was spoiled by her favorite aunt, Virginia Fairchild.
I taught her a lot. I taught her how to dress, and that Rachel just didn't have time to do all of that. And I'd sew for her and make her clothes, and she was always so proud.
As a young child, Tammy went to Aunt Jin's church, but at the age of 10, she accompanied her friend to the Assemblies of God. It turned out to be a very special day.
The power of God fell on the church, and it fell on the kids.
We send them forth in the name of Jesus. Let the mighty power.
It wasn't long before Some of them were getting what they call slain in the spirit, and they were falling on the floor. No hands laid on them. It was just happening. So that was the moment, that was the change in her life.
Tammy was only a child, but on that day she says she felt the glow of God's love and knew that she wanted to devote her life to Jesus. Tammy's life now began to revolve around her faith and her extended family. Her aunts, uncles, and cousins gathered for family celebrations and for Tammy's favorite holiday, Christmas.
Oh, especially at Christmas time. I mean, there were, I'd say 500 different gifts spread out around the front room of the house under the Christmas tree. And Mom got on the piano and we started singing, praising the Lord, and just having a good time.
As a teenager, she spent her summers at Bible camp and was voted queen. But when she entered Falls High School in 1956, she failed to make an impression.
She was a plain girl, a little girl, probably under 5 feet, with no makeup. She really didn't participate in extracurricular activities. I believe she sang in the choir, but she really didn't have a profile in the school.
Tammy got an after-school job at Woolworth, where Aunt Jen worked, but otherwise didn't mix much with people outside her church. Its rules, which forbade ball games, dances, and movies, set Tammy apart from her more worldly contemporaries, who were obsessed with cars, dating, and rock and roll. To them, Tammy was often an object of scorn.
Some of the high school boys drove up alongside of us, tooted their horn like teenage boys will do, and were going to ask us to get in the car and go for a ride with them, I'm sure. Then they saw that it was Tammy, and she had the reputation in town of being the Christian girl, so they said, "Oh, no, that's that Christian girl. We don't want to be seen with her."
Shortly before graduating from high school in 1960, Tammy became engaged to Stanley Kramer, her pastor's son. Not content with a future as a housewife, Tammy was determined, as her mother had been, to turn the world toward Jesus. She decided to become a preacher. Tammy wanted to go to North Central Bible College, where Stanley was enrolled, but her fiancé objected. Tammy went anyway and became active on the campus social scene. Among the students at the college, there was a sophomore who was worried about her reputation. His name was Jim Bakker.
She would always wink at me, even when she was engaged to this other guy, when we'd go down the halls, and it would make me angry because I thought, well, why is she winking at me if she's engaged to another guy? But she would go out with, 5 or 6 guys, a whole group of guys, and I would tell her that she's going to hurt her reputation if she don't stop going out with so many guys.
Tammy's engagement to Stanley ended quickly. Jim Bakker wasted no time asking her out, and quickly found she had a serious side.
She wanted to be a minister, a missionary, and she was as totally sold out to God as I was.
Jim Bakker, 2 years older than Tammy, was born in Muskegon, Michigan in 1940, the youngest of Raleigh and Fernia Bakker's 4 children. Raleigh Bakker's family founded the first Assemblies of God Church in Muskegon, and Jim was raised in a strict religious environment, similar to Tammy's. The young Bakker was shy and uncomfortable, except in front of a microphone. There he seemed at ease and gained quite a reputation as a DJ at school dances and talent shows. His talent as an entertainer, however, did not please his church.
I guess the offensive part to the church was that they didn't condone dancing. There was rigid opposition. So he kind of detoured off track, and he was the DJ, and, we had a lot of fun.
I remember wanting to do this so much. It was my first chance to ever do anything beside, be this shy little boy. Suddenly I was excelling at something.
The fun stopped on a snowy night in 1958 when Jim accidentally hit a small boy with his car.
I stepped out of the car just in time to see them pick the body of a little, I don't know, I think he was 3 years old, a very small little boy, from underneath the wheels of the car. The car had ran completely over him. I thought he was dead.
For a few days, Jim lived in fear of having killed the boy.
Little Jimmy recovered completely. It was the grace of God, and that night I really said, God, you know, I'll serve you.
There was a complete change in Jim's attitude. He now lived for his faith and studied to become a preacher. His almost ostentatious all-night prayers at Bible college made him a holy Joe in the eyes of other students. But then he met Tammy.
There were sparks flying, and it was love at first sight. And she was so talented and so dear and sweet and fun. And I have a feeling he was looking for fun.
On their first date, Jim kissed Tammy. On the second, he asked her to go steady. On the third, he proposed. And they were married on April Fool's Day, 1961, in the Minneapolis Evangelistic Auditorium. There were no wedding pictures to send home because the camera broke. But International Falls was within driving distance, and the newlyweds visited Tammy's family instead.
And she was on his lap and kissing him, and they were giggling. I mean, they wouldn't even carry a conversation with us. And their eyes twinkling and couldn't keep their hands off each other, you know.
It looked like a great beginning to a romantic marriage. There was only one problem. The Bible college did not allow students to marry and expelled Jim and Tammy. They were now on their own and having to find a way to survive.
Biography will continue in a moment on A&E.
Introducing the Wind Tunnel Bagless by Hoover. It picks up more dirt than any other bagless upright. Wind tunnel technology for clean, bagless for convenience. And with the powered hand tool, it's more than just easy. It's also quite powerful. Perhaps the world's best vacuum.
When you use the Kodak Picture Maker at Walgreens Photo Center, you can make the perfect gift in less than 5 minutes. You simply print directly from your photo. You can even improve your photos by cropping, reducing red eye, or adding borders and text. Even save your new print on a floppy disk to take with you. The Kodak Picture Maker at Walgreens, where America takes its pictures.
Now, buy one Kodak Picture Maker sheet for $6.99 and get a second for $0.10 at Walgreens.
The following message paid for by the people you thought you knew. You voted, we listened.
She beat the drugs and met E.T.
Hey, he gets all the chicks.
5 categories, 50 candidates.
The angel or the witch?
Who lived your favorite story? You voted. Now find out who won.
Regis! That's my final answer.
Viewers' Choice Week, all next week at 8, 7 Central on A&E.
Mayday!
From the Academy Award-winning director of Forrest Gump.
Hello?
I never should have gotten on that plane.
He thought he was lost forever.
We had a funeral, coffin.
What was in it?
But the end of an extraordinary journey
We're gonna bring you back to life.
was only the beginning. Tom Hanks, Castaway, a Robert Zemeckis film, rated PG-13, December 22nd, only in theaters.
You are watching Tammy Faye Bakker on Biography.
Everything changed for Tammy and Jim Bakker in the spring of 1961. They were only 19 and 20, but they had married and been expelled from Bible college. Suddenly, life had moved beyond romance to the demands of daily life in the big city of Minneapolis. Jim landed a job in the restaurant of the elegant Rothschild department store, and Tammy worked in a boutique. Jim also served as local youth pastor, and both still dreamed of becoming evangelists. Their big break came in 1962 when a traveling pastor invited them to come to North Carolina. Without hesitation, they went south and began a career as itinerant ministers. Jim preached, and Tammy sang and played the accordion.
We were speaking every single night. We'd end the service on Sunday night, travel on Monday, Tuesday night, we would start in another church, speak every night through Sunday, and then start another church on the next Tuesday night. But it was the call of God, a call to preach the gospel.
It was a hardscrabble existence. For 3 years, they traveled around in an old Cadillac and lodged with local pastors. Their income was whatever offerings came their way. But at least they were beginning to make a name for themselves. When evangelist Pat Robertson saw a puppet show for children that Tammy had devised, he invited them to perform on his fledgling Christian TV operation, Christian Broadcasting Network.
Hi, everybody!
Tammy was the voice of Susie Moppet and Allie Alligator, and Jim talked to them.
Tammy Faye was both puppets. She was Susie and Allie. I always joked that she had a split personality because Allie was the good personality, and Susie was the bad.
When she became Susie, she became this almost naughty little girl that was just pushing the limits on everything, you know, and funny.
This time I want a good part.
Well, let's see, we have one other big part, and it's a very, very important part. It's the part of God.
Oh, I'll take it. I'll be God.
Tammy Faye really didn't like doing the shows. You know, on the way to the show, many times we would fight. She said, I don't want to do this. So when we got on the air, Susie Moppet would literally be arguing with me about almost the same things that we were fighting about before we got on stage.
I tell you, Susie Muppet settled a lot of arguments.
Children loved the show, but Jim had grander plans for Christian television. For years, it had featured Sunday sermons and Billy Graham crusades.
We need God!
Jim and Tammy had a revolutionary concept. They were determined to make religious programs entertaining.
They were just, you know, a ball of enthusiasm. They were always up and going and like they were on a mission.
They believed that they could use television to make the gospel unavoidable. To make it just a presence out there throughout society, and that was sort of their goal for television.
In 1966, Jim began to host a religious talk show a la Johnny Carson that he'd invented. The program was called the 700 Club because at one point, 700 people needed to give $10 a month to keep the station afloat. The show became immensely popular, and Tammy often performed as a guest singer. She also began a career as a recording artist, releasing several records. But it was not enough for Tammy. She wanted a baby, and Jim, too busy with his career, did not. Tammy kept pestering her reluctant husband into fatherhood, and on March 2nd, 1970, at age 27, she gave birth to their first child, Tammy Sue. She was a television baby from day one.
I just remember running around on the set as a kid and just loving it, not knowing anything different.
The Bakkers were becoming a well-known and popular TV family, and their entire life was consumed by work. Jim and Tammy considered themselves the stars of CBN and expected star treatment. Jim also wanted more authority than Pat Robertson was willing to yield, and their relationship deteriorated. After 7 years with CBN, Jim and Tammy left the network.
They never wanted to be the sideshow. They always wanted to be the main act. And that was one of the reasons that they broke with Robertson and moved to California.
In 1974, they returned to Charlotte, North Carolina, determined to create a TV ministry of their own. They began their operation in an abandoned store, but success forced them to relocate. In 1976, they moved to a Georgian mansion. They called it Heritage Village.
And now, here's your host, PTL President, Jim Bakker.
Thank you. Welcome to the PTL Club. Isn't this a great day?
Their talk show, PTL, or Praise the Lord, gained viewers at a rapid rate. People just fell in love with the charming hosts.
Oh,
No, that's Santa Claus.
I think they were quite opposite of each other. He was quite shy, almost introverted at times.
And there's one thing there's no shortage of, and that's God's love.
But you put him in front of a camera, and he just had that ability to look into the camera and talk to each person that was watching.
Oh, yes, there's no shortage of God's love. The Bible says I've never seen the right...
Tammy would try just about anything you asked her to, and a lot more. It was kind of tough to keep up with her sometimes.
People are coming up to me all over PTL and saying their prayer requests, almost all of them have been answered already. I thought, boy, I better get mine in or I'm going to miss out.
Tammy played the ditzy blonde to Jim's straight man. With Jim and Tammy, devoted Christians dared to laugh and have fun.
It was a happy time. It was a joyful time. You watched it on TV, and these two wonderful, happy people made you feel that you were accepted and a part of the group.
They weren't judgmental people. In fact, one of the things that they preached was that God forgives you. You don't have to be perfect. God forgives you.
Rhode Island?
It was definitely not the attitude that Jim and Tammy had grown up with, but their message of tolerance and forgiveness resonated with their viewers. Their audience also liked the way Jim and Tammy embraced affluence and material things.
I never thought of either of them as theological giants. I mean, I thought they had a fairly simple theology that was in some ways dangerously simple. Jim was preaching that if you believe the right things, God will reward you in precisely the way that you want him to.
Somebody gave me a Rolls Royce the other day.
It almost was like God was this kind of cosmic errand boy that you told him what you wanted, and he went out and found it for you.
So I'm stuck with it for a year anyway. But
praise God, and when you pray for a Winnebago, tell him what color.
Now, Lord Jesus, over this great PTL television network family.
God had rewarded Jim and Tammy. They were living and dressing the part of TV stars and becoming famous outside the religious world. Their operation had grown 7,000% in 18 months. When Jim acquired a satellite broadcasting network in 1977, he immeasurably expanded PTL's reach, and it was now carried on 1,300 cable stations across the country.
And remember, God loves you. He really does.
The influence of their show boosted the attendance at Pentecostal churches all over the nation.
I was surprised because Tammy Faye had gone to a Bible college for 4 or 5 months, and yet now she's taking, all of a sudden, she's assumed a leadership position within the Christian community in the United States.
Jim and Tammy had done astoundingly well and looked like God's favorites, but in private, they were having trouble. In 1975, their son Jamie Charles was born by cesarean section, but Jim had been too busy on television to stay with Tammy during the birth. It was a painful slight that Tammy couldn't get over. She retired for a year to be a mother, and then the entire family was back in the television studio for the next several years.
I did not like to be on TV at all. I'd always bring like 2 little action figures with me, and I'd play with them, and my dad would like have to grab them out of my hand. He'd have some serious conversation going with somebody, and I just didn't want to be there.
On her return to the screen, Tammy got her own program called Tammy's House Party. Tammy was now a star and tried to look the role with plunging necklines and false eyelashes, heavy with mascara. It became her trademark.
I guess the reason that he loves me, you don't see.
The only way that I recognized my sister was her eye teeth. I mean, the eyelashes were just caked on. The makeup looked like it had been put on with a trowel and sanded off. It was just unreal.
And I think it's very important that everybody use a little eyeliner.
It was like
you
a mess.
don't have to line your eyes.
And she didn't have to reveal the true person, because with the makeup she could be happy and outgoing, and this is what people would see.
Thank you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. Praise.
But Tammy was not happy. When Jim bought some 2,000 acres of pine-covered land across the border in South Carolina and became obsessed with the expansion of their operation, their marriage suffered.
Right now, I'm going to ask the board of directors to join with me.
On Jim's 38th birthday, January 2nd, 1978, they broke ground on Heritage USA, which Jim proclaimed to be the greatest project ever in the history of Christianity. But Jim's dreams were not Tammy's ambitions. She began to feel neglected and would find solace in a way that had unforeseen repercussions.
Biography will continue in a moment on A&E.
For every job, there's a hard way, or there's the Dremel way. The Dremel rotary tool with more than 150 available accessories. For every problem, there's a Dremel solution.
Need help sending gifts? We've got extra staff and longer hours to relieve that holiday stress. Just stop by your local mailboxes, etc. We'll take it from here. This holiday season, shop on eBay.com and get preferred pricing on shipping from mailboxes, etc.
Ultimately, I wanted this movie to chronicle one family's odyssey through the West.
Yeah, now feel the passion.
I do tend to use the same actors in my movies.
He sent some of his work to the Hollywood studios.
Best movie I ever made? Definitely Thanksgiving '98.
I'd like to watch Thanksgiving '98 one more time.
Nice.
The Canon ZR-10 digital camcorder lets you take home movies to a whole new level.
Pack the bags, baby. We're moving to Hollywood.
An A&E original movie presentation. In a time when brutality was the only way to rule, seduction was her greatest weapon. Catherine Zeta-Jones. In a story of one of the most powerful women of all time, Catherine the Great. Sunday on A&E.
Welcome to a hot spot where pain and discomfort dwell. It's down at the end of Acid Street, the Hotspot Hotel. Well, your stomachs are burning, baby. The acids are churning, baby. You're getting heartburn all the time. Well, you change the way you're eating. You're getting exercise. You're treated for 2 days a week or more. The acid starts to rise.
Prescription Prevacid can mean 24-hour relief from acid reflux disease. Prevacid turns off tiny pumps that produce acid. It has a low occurrence of side effects, such as diarrhea, abdominal pain, and nausea. Ask your doctor if Prevacid is right for you.
So leave your heartburn behind, yeah!
A&E's look at Tammy Faye Bakker continues on Biography.
Tammy and Jim Bakker had started out as itinerant preachers and gained quite a following. By 1978, they presided over a Christian broadcast network which eventually reached 13 million households. But Jim had grander visions. He wanted to create a Christian retreat, which recalled the best of the Bible camps of his youth. He called it Heritage USA.
Heritage USA came from my childhood going to camp. And as I grew up, I remembered the great times and the great fun I had at youth camp. And I wanted to bring back the excitement of camp meeting and a Christian retreat. And that was the vision and dream for Heritage USA.
There it is. We've officially broken ground for the PTL Partner Center.
Jim spared no expense or energy on the project, which was to include a TV studio, campgrounds, and a hotel and an amusement park and shops. Building Heritage USA became his obsession, leaving little time for family life.
The driving force of Jim's life was Heritage USA. Not that he intended his family to be secondary, never. But when life is consumed 16 or more hours in a day, there's not a whole lot of energy and time left.
It's the truth. And you know, every time we build buildings, and we build a lot of buildings around PTL.
That is not fun either. He was working all the time. Of course, she became upset. Heritage USA was growing so rapidly that I don't think it was even a matter of thinking about building. It just happened. And the bigger the growth, the further apart Jim and Tammy became.
Tammy was left to her own devices and was resentful of Heritage USA. But in public, she was all smiles. On TV, the Bakkers looked like a couple still very much in love.
They were the all-American Christian couple. She appeared on air to be sort of the dutiful wife. At the same time, she also had ambitions of her own. She wanted to be a gospel singer.
In 1978, Tammy began to spend a lot of time in Nashville, with singer-songwriter Gary Paxton. He took her talents seriously, helped her develop as a singer, and produced her records. By 1980, it was clear to everybody that Tammy and Gary were very close. Bakker banned Paxton from PTL, and the press was all over the story. Both Paxton and Tammy denied having had an affair.
When I found out there were problems in my marriage, and usually the husband's the last one to know, it was so heartbreaking.
When Jim and I began to first have marriage problems, he'd say to me, well, if that's the way you want it. And that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear, hey, lady, you're my wife.
But the horrible thing in ministry is when it becomes show business and the show must go on.
Then on a trip to Clearwater, Florida in December 1980, Jim had an affair with a church secretary named Jessica Hahn. It was an insignificant encounter, but it would have disastrous consequences. Tammy and the public wouldn't learn about the fling until years later. At the time, the marriage was saved when Jim began to court Tammy all over again. Together, they joined honored guests at Ronald Reagan's 1981 inauguration. The Bakkers, holy rollers from small-town America, had reached the peak of American society. And in their own domain, Heritage USA, they were practically royalty.
The tremendous success turned Jim and Tam into unbelievable celebrities. It got to be where they really were king and queen of religious television.
And they lived like royalty, too, on their combined income of over $1 million.
Prospering is not wrong. What becomes wrong about prosperity is when you focus in on prosperity rather than focusing in on God.
I think they did become the Christian version of the conspicuous consumption of the 80s.
She says when you're shopping in the stores, they always have music in it. It makes you buy twice as much.
They just continued to spend and spend and spend, both personally and on PTL. And really, you couldn't distinguish between the two because PTL was their personal kingdom.
The key to their financial success was the PTL satellite network. It brought in about $50 million a year in viewer donations and was the envy of other televangelists. Jim and Tammy were living a high-pressure existence in the constant crush of adoring crowds and an unforgiving spotlight. When Tammy wanted to relax, she went shopping.
I watched for Tammy's little blonde head darting around so I wouldn't lose her. It was release for Tammy, really. It was her wind down time.
When she wanted to escape, she sought refuge at her favorite home at Tega Cay with her neighbor and their children.
The children loved to be with Tammy because she was fun and laughed and would let them do whatever they wanted to do. She would let them eat chocolate. She would do fun things. If they wanted to dress up, she would dress them up in whatever they wanted to dress up in.
So in a way we were spoiled, but we were also protected from being, you know, little hellions. If I ever disrespected anyone, I mean, it was spanking right away.
Our parents, you know, didn't beat religion over our heads and let us listen to the music we wanted to listen to and let us be kids.
Have a wonderful day here at Heritage USA. We love you so much.
But Heritage USA, which attracted 6 million visitors annually, dominated the Bakkers' lives. Many Christians from backgrounds similar to Jim and Tammy's loved the Christian theme park, which offered family fun in a moral, alcohol-free environment. The friendly atmosphere, elegant accommodations, and first-class service made it the third most popular park in the country in the mid-1980s.
And we were made to feel that we were important people. And the thousands who went there were made to feel that way. You're very important, special people.
Jim gave Christian people class. The hotel was magnificent. And he gave to people who lived in little church areas a chance to kind of get into the marvelous things of the world without the taint of the world. Jim made it possible for everybody to enjoy the good things of life.
Jim and Tammy wanted Heritage USA to become the perfect Christian community, and it kept expanding. The Bakker empire swallowed over $3 million a week. It needed a lot of money to survive.
And Tammy Faye, I think the most exciting thing in all the world is our lifetime partnership.
Oh, Jim, I do too. It has unbelievable possibilities.
Well, can you
Jim
imagine?
raised much of the money by promising that for $1,000, people would be entitled to 4 days and 3 nights at a Heritage Hotel every year for life. Only Jim Bakker could make the deal seem plausible.
From the standpoint of charitable fundraising, I don't think he had an equal. He made it sound so good, you just said, I've got to be a part of that. When we got into telethon or major projects, I made sure I never carried a check, and I made sure I didn't have a credit card. He was good.
PTL telethons could go on for days. The phones lit up and the money poured in. Unfortunately, there was a problem nobody talked about.
Clearly, they did cross the line into criminality. They were selling timeshares to hotel rooms that didn't exist. And it almost was like PTL became a pyramid scheme. And to pay debts that they already had, they were selling things that they hadn't yet built.
When the memberships are gone,
Construction continued, and the Bakkers' incessant appeals for donations would soon get them into deep trouble, and eventually bring down their empire.
Biography's look at Tammy Faye Bakker will continue. But first, Biofeedback asks, has TV evangelism gotten a bad reputation? Log on to biography.com and tell us what you think.
The body has its own suspension. The engine has its own suspension. Even the 6-disc in-dash CD changer has its own suspension. If you suspect there's a reason the QX4 feels so smooth, you'd be wrong. There are many reasons. Imagine the ultimate luxury vehicle. We have the Infiniti QX4.
I'm getting him a football this year. I'm going to put it in a big, giant box and put rocks in the bottom of it so it feels really, really heavy. So hopefully he won't be able to guess what it is.
I'm going to get her some jewelry, but I'm not going to put it in a regular jewelry box. I'm going to put it in a larger box, and I'm going to weight it down. So it'll take her a long time just to figure out that it's not that actual size. So it'll take her a while.
Find all kinds of holiday surprises at Walmart.com. Always low prices.
Can your radio do this? Only one radio can give you stereo sound this big, yet is small enough to fit almost anywhere. The extraordinary Wave Radio from Bose. Press the remote control and hear big, rich sound that fills the room. Sounds so rich, Popular Science called it a sonic marvel. You hear music the way it was meant to be heard. Clear, full, incredibly lifelike. You've got to hear the Wave Radio to believe it, and now you can, satisfaction guaranteed. Call toll-free to hear it in your home. Ask about our free shipping offer and interest-free payment plan. Experience big stereo sound from a radio. Call today.
With our 12-month payment plan, the Wave Radio CD is just $41.58 a month.
Tomorrow on Biography Saturday, he was an international playboy who made politics fashionable.
There's no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation.
But his diamond-sharp intellect couldn't save his homeland from the brink of ruin.
I don't spend my time regretting and looking back.
Pierre Trudeau on Biography Saturday. Tomorrow on A&E.
All we do is discount Toyotas at Old Mill every day.
Save thousands now on the best-selling car in America, the 2001 Toyota Camry at Old Mill Toyota. Right now, get 5.9% financing for 60 months, 4.9% financing for 48 months, 3.9% financing for 36 months, or 2.9% financing for 24 months on Toyota Camry at Old Mill Toyota. Save thousands on interest with 5.9%, 4.9%, 3.9%, or 2.9% financing from Old Mill Toyota.
Just look for the special Get 'em Together ad.
Jack Frost, it's on its way, and gas prices aren't getting any cheaper. As a social worker, is that low-income families have the ability to fulfill their basic need for warmth.
Gas
gas prices continue to rise.
Might be able to keep up with rising energy. Stop worrying. Controlled Comfort has high-efficient furnaces and heat pumps that will bring your gas bill way down. So turn it up, relax, and call today, 333-2775.
You are watching Tammy Faye Bakker on Biography. When you give your $1,000 gift, you'll receive a
In 1986, Tammy and Jim Bakker were at the height of their careers, but they were living under constant financial stress, and their strained relationship was worsening.
Roe Messner is the premier church builder.
Shortly after New Year's 1987, they broke ground for another grand structure at Heritage USA. In the frigid weather, Tammy caught a cold that quickly developed into a high fever. A few days later, she found herself in a hospital in Palm Springs. Here, it was also discovered she'd become addicted to sedatives. Jim and Tammy's children were witnesses to their parents' struggles. Still, it was a terrible surprise when in March, 17-year-old Tammy Sue ran away from home.
My parents were going through the most rough time in their life, and I felt alone, and I didn't know where to turn, and so I ran away and I got married.
Tammy Sue's elopement with 24-year-old Douglas Chapman would seem like positively good news compared with some of the events that followed. About a week after, Jim learned that the Charlotte Observer was about to reveal he'd had an affair with Jessica Hahn, and that PTL had paid her to keep quiet. Now, Jim was forced to tell Tammy about the affair. Her reaction was predictable.
It was all the different emotions. You know, from silence to outrage to tears. I remember we were in Palm Springs, and she started screaming and just started beating me, and she was just pounding me.
But the scandal threatened more than their marriage. It endangered their PTL ministry. In an effort to save it, they asked fellow televangelist Jerry Falwell to help run Heritage USA.
Jim Bakker put his arm around me and asked me personally to help him in his hour of crisis.
The proposed arrangement had led to a battle between Tammy and Jim.
There was a lot of upheaval over that. She was very adamant against letting go of any control in the area.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
She's very vocal. Bye-bye. She can be loud.
Jim has said that no sooner had he relinquished command than he realized Jerry Falwell had no intention of ever returning control of PTL to the Bakkers. Jim had made a huge mistake.
And I wept. And I knew it was over.
Now all hell broke loose. The press revealed numerous financial irregularities at PTL, and a crowd of hungry reporters circled the Bakkers' house to chronicle Jim's downfall.
So many ministers were so jealous and so envious of Jim, when if they would have only helped him and said and fought with him to keep PTL, that everybody would have gained by it.
Instead, Jerry Falwell announced that millions in PTL donations were missing, and he accused the Bakkers of terrible greed.
I see the greed. I see the self-centeredness. I just don't see an ounce of repentance.
But Falwell had a trump card: accusations that Jim had indulged in homosexual acts with a couple of employees, and therefore would be considered unfit to serve as a minister.
And Jim, I must tell you, as much as I love you and care for you and will pray for you, I would be doing a disservice to God and to the church at large to allow you to come back here now or ever.
You felt like you were walking through a minefield. There was an explosion here, an explosion there that you didn't even know was coming.
On June 10th, 1987, Jim and Tammy visited PTL for the last time. 2 days later, PTL was declared bankrupt. All the Bakker houses were impounded and their belongings auctioned off. Tammy and Jim lost everything.
I remember my last day at that house, sitting in my room crying because I had to leave. It was very devastating.
Extremely, extremely devastating to lose everything overnight and for it to happen in front of the world.
I would like to say I hope that Jerry Falwell and his family never have to suffer the way that they've made our family suffer.
Jerry Falwell was defeated too. By October, he announced he had been overwhelmed by fundraising problems at PTL and resigned his leadership post. Soon after, the show was off the air, and the park would be closed and eventually abandoned. And things went from bad to worse. Jim and Tammy were soon back where they'd started, broadcasting to a handful of stations from a studio in a strip mall, this time in Florida. There, they tried to establish a new ministry, but before they had even begun to regain their balance, Jim was indicted on 24 counts of fraud.
God willing, this is my last program for 8 weeks. I've got to go on trial, so Tammy will be taking the programs.
Jim Bakker stood accused of overselling timeshares in Heritage USA hotels. In August 1989, he reported to court in Charlotte, leaving Tammy behind in Florida.
With Jim not here, it's just, I don't know how to do it. You know, like Jim does.
Jim was ill-prepared for what awaited him.
God had held him in his hands since he was 18 years old, and he was trusting that God would see him through this as well. That didn't happen.
3 days later, Jim had a nervous breakdown and was led away to Butner Psychiatric Prison for observation. Tammy was outraged about his humiliating treatment.
And they dragged him out. They paraded him across the yard in shackles, sobbing and crying, with his hair all messed up.
The trial resumed 6 days later, but was stopped again by Hurricane Hugo. Soon after it died down, the verdict was announced. Jim Bakker was found guilty of defrauding his followers of $158 million. A month later, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison.
45 years for a white-collar crime, far in excess of sentences meted out to murderers and rapists. It was outrageous. You know, he was tarred by the government as an exemplar of the greed of the 1980s.
Jim was taken away to a prison in Minnesota. In Florida, at the other end of the country, Tammy had to find a way to survive with her 12-year-old son, Jamie Charles.
We were left with $1,000 to our name, and I knew of no way. Couldn't go work at Woolworth's again, you know, where I worked for when I was a little girl. What kept Jamie and I alive, you know, financially for, I would say at least 6 months. I was getting like $2,000 or $3,000 a month from the resale shop for my clothes.
She was really angry with God, and how could this happen? And she said, I'm just going to turn my back on you. She thought, and if I turn my back on God, who would I have?
The solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand.
The Bakker family had hit bottom. Tammy's future looked grim, but she had always been a survivor.
It's not over till it's over.
It's about absorption, staying strong, and getting the most out of your calcium supplement. It's about the Citracal difference. In a recent study of leading brands of calcium, Citracal was better absorbed. So do what's right for your bones. Take Citracal.
You don't need to go to extremes to afford a great car. Not at Oldsmobile's Zero to Pay drive-away, 0 down plus 0 payments, and 0 interest for 1 full year for qualified buyers on the Fun to Drive Bolero. That's right, absolutely 0 to pay for 1 entire year on every 2000 and 2001 Oldsmobile. Limitations apply. Call for details. Drop everything and see your Oldsmobile dealer today.
I told my doctor when a migraine hits, my day is shot. She told me about a different kind of migraine medicine. Today, Imitrex can target your total migraine. Target the throbbing pain, nausea, sensitivity to light and sound. Some other medicines just dull the pain. Imitrex was the first medicine of its kind believed to target the nerves and blood vessels that can trigger your total migraine. There are lots of prescription migraine medicines, but Imitrex is America's most prescribed.
This is the way it ought to be.
Imitrex is not right for
If you have certain types of heart or blood vessel disease or uncontrolled blood pressure, you shouldn't take Imitrex. Very rarely, certain people, even some without heart disease, have had serious heart-related problems. So talk to your doctor, especially if you have risk factors for heart disease such as smoking, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol, or if you are pregnant, nursing, or taking medications.
If migraines are disrupting your life, tell your doctor and target your total migraine with Imitrex.
This January on A&E.
100 Center Street, New York City's night court.
A series so real,
where lawyers get their feet wet.
it has real lawyers talking.
100 Center Street.
This January on A&E.
Now you can subscribe to Biography magazine for almost 50% off the newsstand price. 12 issues for only $19.97. Call 1-800-901-2233 to order Biography magazine.
Now get the Wall Street Journal delivered for 8 weeks at just 37 cents a day, a 50% savings. Call now 800-293-8400. That's 800-293-8400 for the Wall Street Journal.
A&E's look at Tammy Faye Bakker continues on Biography.
By the early 1990s, Jim and Tammy had fallen from royalty to outcasts. Jim had been convicted of fraud in 1989 and was imprisoned in Minnesota, far away from Tammy in Florida.
It was a strange life because Dad was gone, Tammy Sue was gone, and so it was like me and Mom. It was just a lonely, kind of a sad time.
Tammy headed a small ministry that barely supported her son Jamie and herself.
It's a whole new thing for me being a pastor, so I'm just trying my wings.
The financial and emotional stress was enormous, and Tammy decided it was time to move on.
Tammy called me one day and said, "You're not going to believe what I've just done." And I said, "What have you done, Tammy?" And she said, "I've just signed my divorce papers. I'm getting a divorce."
Tammy ended her marriage of 31 years in March 1992, and the next year in October, she married Roe Messner. It was a new start, and she was determined to forget all about the PTL scandal.
I've put all that behind me, and I'm not going to relive it anymore. It's too painful. It hurts too bad.
Roe Messner provided her with a comfortable life in California. He also financed his old friend Jim's appeals for sentence reduction, and Jim was released on probation July 1, 1994, after just under 6 years in prison.
Glad to be back in the Carolinas.
When I had the homecoming gathering for my father, you know, had a big sign made and had the food and the music and the celebration. He was on his way to a new life.
Mr. and Mrs. Jim Bakker.
In 1998, Jim married Lori Beth Graham, a fellow minister. Tammy remained on good terms with her former husband. Later, they even appeared on The Larry King Show together as part of an effort to revive their separate careers.
Would Jim and Tammy consider doing a TV show together again?
Tammy says yes. Jim says no.
Jim is trying to rebuild his ministry, and Tammy hopes to make it in television, on the secular side. In 1996, she hosted a short-lived show with another Jim, Jim Bullock.
My bra! What are you doing with my bra?
He was crazy, she was zany, but the show had perhaps too much energy and was canceled. But Tammy had already received much worse news. She had colon cancer.
The doctor called, and then I had to go tell her. And in true Tammy fashion, she said, "Well, we'll just go take care of it."
She told the doctors, "I'll do anything but take my makeup off." And they let her keep her makeup on during surgery.
Oh, I wouldn't go into surgery any other way. What if I died? God wouldn't know me if I went to heaven.
Tammy's operation was successful, and she has remained cancer-free.
Tammy's a tough old broad. She's as tough as they come. But she's very soft and easy and very loving and compassionate. She cares about people, but she's tough. She's a survivor.
But as if she hadn't been through enough, she saw her second husband go to jail in 1997. Roe, another casualty of the PTL scandal, had been found guilty of bankruptcy fraud and served 27 months. On his release, Tammy and Roe Messner resumed their life together, and things finally seemed to fall into place. for Tammy Faye.
And the same God that has taken care of me all this time will take care of me. When I was a little girl, I was always so happy, and I was always so optimistic. And I feel free again. I feel alive. I am happier now. I can honestly say I am happier now than I've ever been.
Tammy now lives in the Charlotte area in order to be near the Bakker grandchildren. And she's right where she wants to be, back in the public eye, promoting a film about her life and appearing on talk shows.
I've forgiven Jerry Falwell.
She's unstoppable, just as she'd always been.
She blazed a trail and broke all the rules. There probably has never been another woman in that religious field who has created such an unusual heritage just by being herself.
She's a very smart lady, very smart. And Tammy has a strong faith that is very believable, that you can make it. You can make it.
You can make it, oh no! Hang in there.
Both Tammy Faye and the documentary film she inspired made a splash at the Sundance Film Festival this year. The film, chronicling her rise and fall from grace, has played in theaters in over 100 cities since its release in July and is currently on sale on Tammy Faye's very own website, TammyFaye.com. Tomorrow on Biography, flamboyant, fearless, outspoken, Pierre Trudeau was hardly your average elected official. The former Canadian Prime Minister was followed by swarms of admirers and treated more like a rock star than a politician. Pierre Trudeau, Saturday. For Biography, I'm Harry Smith. Good night.
Are you tired of searching for that lost shoe? Want more space? Then you need the Shoe Carousel, the incredible rotating shoe organizer that holds 32 shoes in less than 2 feet of space. Best of all, its rotating carousel lets you find the perfect shoes to match any outfit instantly. And look, it even has a secret spinning compartment for accessories. The Shoe Carousel adjusts to fit any space. Fully expanded, it grows over 6 feet tall, holding over 72 shoes. Use it on the floor or hang it on your closet rod. Its unique shoe shapers have built-in air fresheners, so shoes look and smell like new. This flimsy organizer cost $100 and doesn't spin. But now the same closet can go from this to this with the Shoe Carousel on this exclusive TV offer for only $19.99. But wait, call within the next 10 minutes and get Magic Shine, a $20 value, free. No rags, no mess. Magic Shine restores shoes, boots, and more to a brilliant shine in seconds. You get Shoe Carousel and Magic Shine, a $40 value, all for only $19.99. Not available in stores. Call now.
In the heart of Texas, to be a beauty pageant winner is a young girl's dream.
I'm gonna win.
But she'll need more than a perfect smile and a sparkling gown to win the Grand Supreme.
She is a professional pageant child.
Join Terry Bradshaw for a look at child beauty stars on the premiere of The Competition, next on A&E.
Journey into a winter wonderland of gifts at Audrey's Gift Shop. You'll treasure the beauty of Swarovski crystal and jewelry, exquisite Russian art, elegant glass-blown Polonaise ornaments, Boyd's bears and friends that will make you smile. Discover the magic of Department 56 villages and the charm of Christopher Radko ornaments and so much more. And as always, your gifts will be beautifully wrapped at Audrey's either locations, 78th and Dodge or 133rd and West Center Road.
Introducing National Digital Prepay from Verizon Wireless. No long-term contract, no credit check, and no long-distance charges. Plus, it's as easy to refill as your gas tank. And with calls as low as 20 cents a minute, you're free to do whatever you want. Stop by a Verizon Wireless store or call 1-866-2-JOIN-IN. Verizon Wireless. Join in.
A&E Home Video proudly presents the biography you've just seen for $14.95 plus shipping and handling. To order, call 1-800-423-1212 or visit our online store at biography.com.
The guts and glory of child beauty pageants as Terry Bradshaw hosts an all-new edition of The Competition, next on A&E.